Brandt DXT grain carts have efficient unload speeds, large carrying capacities, unmatched durability, and reliable components that make sure your cart is working when you are. Lead the field with DXT grain carts from Brandt. Visit your local Brandt dealer for more information.
Thank you to our show sponsors, the Canola School, RealAg Shops, and Rhizozorb. Rhizozorb is redefining what growers expect from phosphate fertilizer. Backed by data and built for performance, Rhizozorb helps reduce phosphorus losses, improve uptake, and boost ROI without increasing input costs. Join the next wave of growers switching to the next generation of phosphorus fertilizers by visiting phospholutions.com. Hey everyone, welcome to the Agronomists. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith, joining you from the first level of my house, because the second level of my house is an absolute oven. Yet again, it is the thick of things here in the Ottawa Valley. It is midsummer, and I am super excited about tonight's conversation. It's going to be, pretty much just about anything we want to talk about. We've got some great guests that can cover it all. One from the west, one from the east, as we try to do. So, but before I bring them in, of course, quick reminder, if you collect those CEU credits, head on over to realagriculture.com/agronomists. Let us know you took in the show, and we'll get you those CEU credits. I do want to apologize, but not apologize for my voice. I'm a bit raspy. Had a wonderful time this weekend celebrating the wedding of two friends of mine down in Listowel. And, if there's loud music, I just have to speak louder to be heard over it. I couldn't be quiet. Absolutely not. All right. Tonight's episode is focused on pests, and that means diseases, insects, weeds. We can talk about all of them. We've got a little bit of insect discussion to have. We've got a little bit of disease discussion to have. We can open it wide up. And so, of course, to have that kind of conversation, you need some very talented agronomists, and we have those here tonight. We've got Jeanette Gaultier with BASF, based out of Manitoba, and Peter Johnson, of course, our resident agronomist here in Ontario. Jeanette, I'll start with you. How goes Southern Manitoba?
It's pretty good. It's been drier. I think previous guests have said that. I would say the West in general, but there's been some timely rains, actually, spotty rains. So some areas may be luckier than others, but surprisingly, things are looking good.
Okay.
And I say that carefully because I don't want to jinx it.
Yeah. I did see some Manitoba farmers, of course, this past weekend did get some rain, which is great for the soybeans, but it might be a little late for some of the other crops.
Yeah, surprisingly, canola, wheat, like cereals, have been looking good all season. Maybe the lightest soils have been suffering a bit, but yeah, so fingers crossed. I think the soybeans and corn are going to enjoy the rain, and yeah, this will help finish out our cereals and canola.
Jeanette, you have to understand that wheat always looks wonderful. Like, come on, wheat always looks wonderful.
Always.
Canola does the same.
Yeah, it doesn't always look great on the yield monitor. Pete, good to see you again. Of course, Pete joined me on RealAg Radio today earlier, so we've had a bit of a catch up on what's all going on out there. But Pete, a lot of wheat was getting harvested today in my area. And we did have we've got some feedback on what some of those yields are looking like. Like, how are you feeling about this year's average winter wheat yield?
Yeah, we would have had a record in Ontario. I'm convinced of it. I'm not sure we're going to get there now because 19th of June, it went super hot. We were 30 plus degrees Celsius, and that's just all bad for the wheat crop. Still, despite that, Mark Davis in the Yen group chat talking about a field of wheat that he was combining today. Now, he irrigated twice, and he irrigated not so much because it needed water, but because of the heat. and he was trying to
Mm.
cool it down with the irrigation. And he estimates that it gained him between 24 and 30 bushels per acre by irrigating
Wow.
1 inch of water twice. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if Mark's going to be in the chat here or not tonight, but like it's just unbelievable. His yield monitor, without without as Jeanette suggested earlier, yanking back on the stick so that the yield monitor gets this big spike. No, just driving along in the best spots of that field. His yield monitor was bouncing off 190, 190. And that is
That.
like, man. So we had
Mm-hmm.
awesome yield potential. A lot of growers saying most
Mm-hmm.
straw ever, and most straw ever, because grain is just a percentage of the straw, really should also mean most grain ever. But unfortunately, a lot of small kernels, a lot
Yeah.
of almost records, I think. And the odd disaster, growers who did not manage, growers who did not take care of stripe rust. And Lyndsey, we've talked about stripe rust
Mm-hmm.
here in the Agronomists before earlier, but man, it just such a devastating disease. So mostly excellent, not a lot of records, but nonetheless, as I said, Jeanette, wheat always looks wonderful.
Always looks good. Yeah, there is plenty of straw out there. That is for darn sure. Um, Jeanette, I did want to touch on, and Pete, I'll ask you about armyworms in a minute. But I do want to touch on some of the insect pressures potentially. We are sort of, we're past those early predators for sure. Canola's coming out of flower. Canola is one of those interesting ones where there's still plenty to scout for, of course. But what have been some of the insect pressures, at least this year, that you've been dealing with?
I and this is where yeah, same initials as John Gavlosky, but really weeds and diseases is where I shine.
So you're like, there's some creepy crawly ones, and then you call John in and
Oh,
be like, what is this? Yeah.
they are super important though, and I would say if the last few years have maybe been the year of the aphid, I might
Mhm.
say this one's been the year of the weevil. And not that we
Mm,
have like the same amount of weevils, but pea leaf weevil was just out in full force in
yeah.
areas that have traditionally had it. And same with cabbage seed pod weevil. So that's one not necessarily here in Manitoba.
Yeah.
And even out east, I think you guys have pretty light pressures, but in Saskatchewan, like parts of Saskatchewan and Alberta, that's one that people are definitely going to want to be keeping an eye on.
For sure. Pete,
Fortunately,
what? Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, just in the winter canola crop, as Jeanette points out, we typically don't see a lot of cabbage seed pod weevil. We do
Yeah.
see it; it's there, but mostly at low levels. We had just hordes of cabbage moths, right? These white butterflies, and I had a whole
Hmm.
bunch of people calling me saying, like, "What is the matter? Like, is my canola going to make it?" But they're leaf feeders. The caterpillars feed on leaves. They really don't do much damage. And even with those hordes, we saw almost no leaf feeding injury, really. So from a
Hmm.
canola standpoint, things were pretty good. But Lyndsey, you asked insects. Man, it is an insect year. But it's
Hmm.
really intriguing how the beneficials in many cases are keeping some of the pests at bay. So we had soybean aphids come in very early,
Hmm.
and I thought, oh, here we go. It's going to be an epidemic year. We're going to spray a lot of acres. We have sprayed very few acres of soybean aphids. And in some cases, Adam Queen, the great agronomist that works with me, scouts with me, man, he's quite an excellent scout, and he's been scouting soybean fields. And we had actually two fields that. And why? This is a great question. And if John Gavorski was on here, or if Tracy
He's
Bowdy was on
talking
here, I
about.
would be saying,
Yeah.
why? But
Hmm.
we had two fields that we scout that just right out the gate rocketed to high numbers, and we needed to control them. And same growers with other fields where the numbers were there. Like we had low infestation. They were building slowly. I thought, gosh, we're going to have to control them at some point. And now, in some, not all, but in some of those fields, the aphid numbers are actually starting to drop a little bit. And
Mm.
so the predators, the beneficials, are actually looking like they're going to keep ahead of the soybean aphids. But yeah, lots of other pests to talk about, man. It is an insect year here in Ontario. We've
Mhm.
had just about everything.
You,
I sort
I
of
think
feel
you.
like it's also a disease year. So
I
sorry, Jeanette,
I
go
was
ahead.
gonna. Yeah, no, no, I gotta watch my connection too. I was gonna say maybe less of a disease or a insect year here, and I would have guessed we kind of started off hot and dry. Then it's been a little bit cool. So actually, insect pests have maybe been a little bit better here. Surprisingly, yeah, Jason was saying that about the soybean aphids, and I'm thinking in my head, yeah,
Yeah.
Safina POG, and then it's just like, totally. But I agree with you, Pete. I feel like maybe the reason why I lean towards weeds and diseases is they're pretty predictable, whereas insects, it's like, what is going on here? And if you think you don't have to look, you do have to look.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, keep scouting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. Jason notes here more cabbage seed pod weevil moving east in Manitoba, and certainly seeing that, as you mentioned, Jeanette, through Saskatchewan in some other areas. But Lygus bug, diamondback moth larvae, mostly low so far. But soybean aphids found 3 weeks ago. Warren shares that aphids have really been pushed back by the drought here. I expect spider mites any day. Warren, I will say I have been past 2 fields that if I knew who had them, I would be in them because I suspect spider mites. You know, there's that certain look, Pete, to the field when you're like, what's going on there? And sure enough, you get looking. Yes. Definitely, there are some fields that I'm quite certain that's what's going on. Is it spider mites? Now, Warren calls it a drought. Warren, I need you to take that back. It is dry, and it has been dry, and I'm not making light of the dryness in comparison to normal for you, Warren, but it is not a drought. It has rained this year, so it is not entirely a drought, but it is very dry. I did see he sent some of the cracks in the ground over where he is, and it is very dry. Francois shares from a kale perspective, cabbage moths are pretty bad. And Pete, that's one of the things you love kale. That's like it's ruining your dinner.
Kale is just that green stuff they put on the salad bar to
Mm,
adorn the salad bar that one
okay,
should
that's it.
never eat. That
Not
I
and
was
ever.
arugula.
I
Like
was
why would
thinking
you
that.
eat freaking arugula? Just
I
bitter
love.
crap. Oh my gosh.
Are you
I was
kidding me?
thinking
I
that. I'm like,
love arugula.
does
Yeah,
Francois like why is
yeah.
he worried
Come
about
on,
his catch crop?
right? Yeah, your catch crop. I'll have you know we put some forage kale in our cover crop mix because we are going to
Oh,
graze it off. So I'll send you some, Pete. It'll be great. No
no.
lamb chops. You're getting kale. There you go. Warren says 30% of normal rainfall. Yes, that's dry, Warren. That's not a drought. Um, not by Saskatchewan standards, anyway. Okay, we've got so yeah, so definitely some insect issues. Spider mites. I definitely think if you've got soybeans, especially here in the Ottawa Valley, you should be out there. Pete, is this about the time that spider mites move in?
So whenever we get dry, then spider mites can be problematic. And they're living in the fence row. And as long as the fence row is nice and green and juicy, they're happy to stay in the fence row. But as soon as the
Okay.
fence row gets mature and dries out,
Mm,
that's when they make their little web parachute and parachute out into the field. And so they're typically the worst along the edge, but sometimes a bunch can parachute and the wind just kind of carries them and drops them in a particular spot in the field. And so you get spots in the field. The
mhm,
challenge with spider mites, Lyndsey, is that a lot of them are resistant now. And so we have very few products that we can spray to do anything about spider mites. We used to be always dimethoate, dimethoate, dimethoate. For goodness sakes, don't use Matador, the Cyhalothrin lambda, because that would kill everything but the spider mites. So you'd kill the
mm,
beneficials that were keeping them in control. And I can't say that everywhere we have resistant spider mites, but we have a lot of resistant spider mites out there, and this resistance game, I mean, you talk insects, and I mentioned it on the word last week. We have resistant rootworm in some
Mhm.
fields where there's already, at tassel timing, there's already 10% of the corn that is lodged from and goosenecked from
Yep.
rootworm. And it's a traded hybrid. Like it just, you just go, oh my gosh, this is
Oh
not a
gosh.
good news situation, right? But
Yep.
yeah, so spider mites,
Yep.
like absolutely pay attention to them, but
Mm.
control may be very, very difficult.
Okay. Jeanette, how does the corn look? Are you when you
Um,
hear issues with rootworm out here, does it send chills down your spine? Because I feel like it should.
it it does, but it doesn't, because
Mm.
I don't take this the wrong way, but I
Mm.
feel like we have enough other crops in the prairies that
Yes.
really, John's really only found um, rootworms in fields that are corn on corn on corn
Okay.
on corn.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, so we've actually like it's definitely been found in the province, but very minor, for
Mhm.
sure. But I would still encourage people, if especially if you're in that rotation where you do have a lot of corn. I know he's always happy to go out and look, but I think sometimes too the knee jerk reaction is when you see lodging crop is that it must be something from above ground. And I agree with so many things that pulling out some plants and taking a look below
Yep.
ground with pests, it's a must.
Mhm. The West really does. When you've got a 6 crop rotation, a 4 crop rotation, some have a 7 crop rotation. Some of these things don't end up rearing their ugly heads quite so soon. Doesn't mean never. And we've got our own issues in the West, but definitely rootworm is perhaps lower down the list if you've got a pretty diverse rotation. Now, Jason wants to know. So he's in Manitoba, seeing more stink bug in soybean fields. Yuck. Um, for Pete, when should we be concerned about stink bug?
So if you're crush soybeans, you can take an awful lot of stink bug pressure before it really
Yep.
does much harm, because you're like the soybeans will go for crush, and typically a soybean that is misshapen or has a small sting in it, it still just goes for crush, and they don't worry about it. If you're in the IP soybean game, then that's a whole different story. And so here's where you learn that Johnson is not such a great entomologist either, because I'd have to look up what the threshold is for stink bugs. So I'm sorry,
That's
Jason.
fair. Yeah.
I know we have one, but
Hmm.
typically if we start seeing a significant, like 5% of the plants with stings, or if you're seeing, and be careful, because the other thing about stink bugs is that some of them are actually beneficials, and some of
What?
them are. Yep, absolutely. There are stink bugs who are predators, and stink bugs that sting the soybean pod or the edible bean pod, just like the damage is very similar to tarnished plant bug damage on an edible
Just
bean.
ligus. Yeah. Okay.
Yep, yep.
Yes. Okay. Mm-hmm.
And so, uh, if you're seeing a significant number, I think the ligus bug number for canola, isn't it 3 ligus bugs per sweep? And I'm not sure what that number is, right? 30 and 10 sweeps, I think, is what they talk about. So 3 per sweep. Uh, I actually don't know what it is in soybeans, but if I had IP soybeans, and I'm seeing a lot of ligus bugs or stink bugs, I'd be looking
Right.
that threshold up.
Mm-hmm. It's a good point when you think about. We often think about yield impacts of diseases, weeds, insects, etc. But at times it is the quality component, right? And so exactly that a bean that's got a mark on it, or is misshapen because of the feeding, depending on your market, that can actually be the issue, not just a yield hit for sure. Yes, ligus bug and tarnish bugs, the same. So there you go. I learned that. It's so fun how we call things different things across the Canadian Shield, just to keep us on our toes. Absolutely. Okay. I want to go on that topic. We do have, we've got a clip here. So producer Jay, we'll go to our first clip, looking at, of course, that sort of later season insect feeding and damage that some of these pests can do in canola. And then after this clip, I want to move into a conversation on weeds before we get to diseases. So producer Jay, if you would, we'll go to our first clip.
Yeah, so with lygus bugs, the most susceptible time is late flower to early potting. Lygus bugs are a piercing, sucking insect, so as that canola plant starts to get a firmer pod, those lygus can't penetrate the pod and they can't suck those juices out. So late flower to early potting is the most susceptible time for lygus. And then for diamondbacks, it's kind of any time after potting, right up till close to harvest. We will generally see them move in a little closer to harvest because they chew any green material. So when that canola plant still has big green leaves that the diamondbacks can chew on, they tend to do that before moving up to the pods.
So likely for producers to go out during that time of staging to scout for these insects. What are they looking for as far as damage, or how does one assess if they have an issue?
Yeah, so with lygus bugs, one of the best ways to tell if you've got a significant population is if you walk into that canola crop and you come out and you feel sticky. The lygus bugs, as they're sucking those juices out, it kind of leaves a sap, and that gets on you when you're walking through the crop. So to look for levels, you should be looking for levels even if you're not feeling that stickiness. And so you just use a normal sweep net, and the economic threshold that we're looking at for lygus bugs is 20 to 30 per 10 sweeps. And then something else to consider when we're talking about lygus bugs is making sure that we're only counting the 4th and 5th instar and the adult lygus bugs, because the younger ones aren't doing significant damage. And so the best way to tell the difference is once they start growing wing pads on their backs, that's when they're old enough that they're really doing damage to that canola.
Okay. And what about for diamondbacks? What are we looking for as far as damage?
Yeah, for diamondbacks, we're looking for chewing damage. So you'll just see chewing on the pods. Sometimes you'll see a hole in the pod, and then when you break open that pod, all the seeds have been chewed out, but the outside looks like it's still there. So, and you can see them crawling around when they get really bad, but when you're going out and scouting for them, so you're looking at 20 to 30 per square foot. So the best way to tell this is to pull all of the plants from a square foot, bring them back to the hood of your truck, or bring a piece of cardboard into the field with you and bang those canola plants out on the hood of the truck, and then all of the diamondbacks will fall off and you can count them easily that way.
Okay, awesome. And now, in the case, unfortunately, if you find that you do have a problem with either, what are the options to combat either one of these insects?
Yeah, so for lygus, your options are restricted to Matador and Decis. They're contact products. So water volume is key when you're going after those insects with those products. And then with the diamondbacks, you have one more option that is becoming more and more common. So you can use Matador and you can use Decis, but Coragen is one that's becoming more popular because it is a systemic insecticide. So it gets into the plant, and the insect has to chew on the plant in order to kill it.
Our sponsors for the Agronomists are RealAg Shops, Rhizosorb, and the Canola School. From pre-seeding seeder setup and checks to pest ID and advice on nutrient management decisions to tips on determining swath timing, RealAgriculture's Canola School covers every facet of the canola growing season. The Canola School is made possible through sponsorship by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola. Learn more at canolaschool.com or find the videos on YouTube. I just love watching that video and watching the little butterfly fluttering about. It's so lovely. I lied. We have a few insect to talk about. We're going to talk about Western bean cutworm later, more in the gibberella discussion because of the time that we're at in the corn crop. But Albert weighs in with tip of the hat to Tracy Bowdy. For crushed soybeans, the threshold is 1 stink bug per linear foot of row, 8 stink bugs per 20 sweeps. For seed production, half a stink bug, that's gross because it'll smell, per foot of row, or 4 stink bugs per 20 sweeps. I know that it's not actually half a stink bug, everybody. That was a joke. Anyway, thank you, Albert, from Tracy. Great info there. Okay, before we
So
move
just
on. Oh, yeah, go
so
ahead,
just
Peter.
if I can jump in on that. So for IP
Yeah.
soybeans, I would use the seed production
Yes.
threshold.
Yeah,
I would not use the crush
I would.
threshold. And in my
Yeah.
career, I have never sprayed a soybean field for stink
For stink
bugs.
bug.
So
There's still time, Pete.
yeah, oh yeah, for
Checking
sure.
that.
But it just it's not that common, and
Yeah.
maybe stink bugs don't like it. I don't know. We are seeing, by the way, lots of Japanese beetles moving into
Yes.
soybean fields right now, and bean leaf beetles in soybean fields right now. So there's definitely some feeding out there, but yeah, not so much on the stink bug front.
Okay. Now, but what we have seen, and Jeanette, I don't know if you cut these as well, but definitely armyworm issues. Now, Pete, is this a symptom of the drier bias on things? Is it just the time of year or one of those kind of years? But there has been some pretty heavy feeding damage by these things.
So typically, Lyndsey, we get armyworm in winter wheat. That's normally
Okay.
where we see it. The flight and the adult moths, they just line up with winter wheat. They lay their eggs sometime in late May, and then all of a sudden, right about head timing, in the wheat crop, we get these outbreaks, and we have to go control them. This year in the winter wheat crop, at least in Ontario, and I'm pretty sure in Michigan and Ohio, I didn't hear about any armyworm outbreaks. We always see the odd notch. You can say, oh, well, we saw, there's one armyworm there that has taken a notch out of that leaf. And then we get to the spring cereal crop, and it's an absolute nightmare. And so I actually, just before we went live, I was texting with a grower in Bruce County. His barley is 10 days away from harvest. It has no leaves left. The armyworm have wiped out all the leaves, and he says there's now 5 heads per square foot clipped and on the ground from the armyworm.
Oh my. Yeah.
And so this, it's a really interesting thought process. So Chris Stefanzo, she's the entomologist out of Michigan, and she says that this is actually second generation armyworm moths that have come in, and it must have been. And if I had luscious woolly pig feed out there, I would be watching it for armyworm as well. Anything that was really lush and green, kind of in that 3 weeks ago, or depending, but something like that. That's where they've laid their eggs. And the winter wheat was too far advanced; it was too mature.
Okay. Yep.
And so typically the armyworm hits winter wheat here, and the moths fly away, and we give them as part of interprovincial trade to Quebec and the Maritimes.
Right.
Right.
So yes, good.
Breaking down
Quebec,
borders.
That's right.
Exactly.
Elbows up. Okay. Yeah.
So Quebec, it does have some armyworm in their spring cereals as well, but I think Ontario is about as bad as anywhere, and it's just a bizarre year. We just don't normally see that.
All right. Switching gears, Jeanette, into your realm. Weeds. Biggest problem weeds this point in the season. What have you been struggling with your customers?
Oh, I always love this when we do like weed of the year.
Weed of the year.
Yeah, not surprisingly, Manitoba, lamb's quarters. It's been a challenging one. We've been we have been humid, but we started off a little bit dry, and so there was some hit and miss herbicide applications, and lamb's quarters is one that'll eat up that dry, just close down to everything. And then we have some of the usual suspects, kochia, of course, but wild oat really making a play at going back
Really?
for top spot. So really hearing that from a lot of people that wild oat has just been almost, glyphosate kind of changed the game there. And I would say maybe over where Jason is, wild oat is still more of a minor pest. But yeah, really where we have seen it, just relying on older chemistry, and it's just been really, really bad the last year and then this year again.
Mm-hmm. What is it about lamb's quarters? It shows up in the Ontario list as well. And
Mm.
I don't consider, like, it doesn't seem that, maybe because it has a name like lamb's quarters. It seems so kind and sweet and fluffy. But why is it such a hard weed to control, Jeanette?
Such a jerk. I
Such a
actually
jerk.
think it's often the weeds that we're really concerned about, we talk about a lot, are weeds with resistance. But I think for lamb's quarters, it's its ability to tolerate a lot of conditions, but then also
Mm.
tolerate a lot of herbicides. And so it's like, yeah, it's like you
It
don't have
just
to
does
worry
well.
about, yeah, it's
Yeah.
like, okay, I've got glyphosate resistant, whatever. So it's like, okay, I'm going to change my chemistry. Lamb's quarters is like, I'm just going to like laugh in the face of all of them, except for maybe group
Yes.
fours. But yeah, really, really a
Okay.
challenge that way.
Mm-hmm. Pete, we have an issue with it here too. It sticks around.
Right. And part of it is just the fact that it has all those fine hairs on the leaf, and those fine
Mhm.
hairs exude calcium. And so that can interrupt the uptake of a herbicide like glyphosate. There's many different reasons why it can be tough to control. It can germinate from deep. It's a very small seed, and you'd think, oh gosh, it's only going to come up in that top half an inch. It's smaller than canola. If we get canola much deeper than an inch, it hardly ever sees the light of day. Lamb's quarters, oh no, it can come up from an inch and a half or 2 inches deep. If it like it just it's a very adapted weed. However,
Mhm.
this year it has not been the biggest weed problem that I have seen in fields. Uh, it's been a pigweed year for us, and
Okay.
not water hemp. I mean, not that there isn't water hemp out there, is, but every time you see pigweed, you just go, oh, is that water hemp? Because that's bad. No, this has
Right.
just typically been red root or green pigweed. There's also ragweed, and
Mhm.
we had this discussion today on the radio show, right, on RealAg
Yeah.
Radio, Lyndsey. The ragweed in the wheat stubble is probably one of the greatest sources of ragweed pressure in
Mhm.
growers' fields moving forward, because those little wee ragweed plants that are underneath the wheat stubble, they're just about ready to pollinate. And you give them 3 weeks, they've set seed, and now we've really increased the weed seed bank that is out there. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, lots of stuff to kind of pay attention to. But
Mhm.
it almost seemed like in soybeans and edible beans that we typically, with post-emerge products, if we're in IP soybeans or edible beans, reflex is a big herbicide to take out the pigweed in particular, but also the ragweed. This year, there's many growers who timed the reflex appropriately. It burned out the growing point, the main growing point, and all those pigweed plants just turned into a bush and regrew from leaf axils. And so it's a bit of a problem weed this year for sure.
Mhm. Pigweed likes heat, so I'm not surprised that it's loving this year. The ragweed, I'll be able to tell you very shortly, as I don't suffer from allergies, but a lot of people do, and I will tell you that we'll know very shortly when it's pollinating, because everyone will let us know with their itchy, watery eyes and sneezing. Sean Haney has entered the chat. He says he hates kosher, and I think he is in good company. Jeanette, I did. Jason also mentions water hemp. We know that water hemp, of course, as Pete mentions, it is an issue, showing up in new places and spreading. What so far are you seeing with water hemp and scouting this season so far?
This is one I maybe should stick with insects because I actually do have a true story. Um, myself, even, you know, doing resistance sampling, and Pete's right, for Manitoba, pigweeds is a big one too. And I agree.
Yep.
Previous to water hemp, we used to just call everything red root pigweed, but it really
That's right.
wasn't.
Yeah.
There was green pigweed. But now when you see green pigweed, you stop for a minute and then you're like, oh.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, no, it was, resistance sampling in the fall. So we're collecting seed heads, and it was a miserable day. Uh, the rep cut off the seeds heads, passes them to me. I take them home. I take out some seeds, package them up to send to AgQuest. And, it was when Kim Brown said, partway through the winter, she's like, water hemp found in this new area. And I started thinking, I'm like, that's where our resistance samples were from. Then I couldn't sleep at night because I'm that age. So I went and dug the snow, got into the grain bin where I store my
Yeah.
samples, and I look at the seeds head and I'm like, yeah, I actually think, this is probably water hemp. So I think that one's a really great call out, that we can't just assume. And and yes, like I will admit, early on in the water hemp days, green pigweed would just stop me in my tracks. I feel like the more you look, I also feel like it's great. Lots of producers obviously hearing the message, because it definitely is more of a valley problem. But I think we're seeing it in places. It is moving. It's definitely moving westward. Like even Saskatchewan, keep your eyes open. Like it's
Yeah.
probably going to show up. It seems well adapted. So that's one. And yes, kochia. That one's a challenge. I feel like something like water hemp might start off as a patch, but easily spreads. Like pigweed, you tend to get throughout a field. Kochia is very much patchy. Not that you don't get it throughout fields as well, but I think we're at the point where we've got our resistance challenges. It's also well adapted, and I think patch management is really our play here now for kochia. So yeah, I feel like you can do such cool things, and I don't really know, but I hear producers talking, when they're harvesting or when they're seeding, they can drop a pin for a rock and make these algorithms to go back. I say we need a kochia patch algorithm.
Sure. I think
Yeah,
that's a great idea. Why
I
not?
can't do it,
Drop
but I'm going to
drop
throw it out
pins.
there.
Other other
Well,
people can do it. It's fine.
it's
Pete,
it,
do you drop
that,
pins? Do you drop pins?
oh yeah, absolutely. And by the way, the kochia thing would be easy because with AI now,
Sure.
they can train for certain weeds if that weed is enough of a problem. So they could train the AI for on the see and spray technology, right? The
Yeah,
targeted
right.
spray
Yeah.
technology, and then you could drive through the field and it would turn the boom on when it was over top of kochia. But the challenge there is that you still have to have a herbicide that is going to
Yes.
control the kochia, and
Mhm.
we're getting to have less and less of those available because it's multiple resistant, right? Just like fleabane here in Ontario and water hemp
Mhm.
and Paris thought we get Palmer amaranth. So far, touch
Mhm.
wood, we don't have a problem with Palmer amaranth in Ontario, but I don't think it's if, I think it's when, unfortunately, right?
Mhm.
So yeah,
Absolutely. Yep.
but
That
by the way,
is I
you
yeah.
pre-harvest is the other option that I think growers and we're a bit past the window in winter wheat here in Ontario. But man, in Western Canada, if you have those patches, and even here in Ontario, because Dr. Dave, right, Dave Hooker, Ridgetown Campus, University of Guelph, finally went out and did some pre-harvest in his winter wheat crop here in Ontario to
Mhm.
hit the thistle patches. And interestingly enough, when those thistles are just in first flower or bud, that's when you get the best control. So you just drive through and hit where the patches are, and I think that's another really great opportunity to try to get on top of some of these weeds.
Mhm. Absolutely. And of course, post harvest weed control as well. For some of these, we just have to go in when we can, when we have those opportunities. So I'm going to put in my order now for a really beautiful open fall. So if I have to tolerate this incredibly hot weather, I should get a beautiful, cool, but open fall. Jeanette,
I was
you hear
totally
me?
waiting for you to order some heat. I was like, oh,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh, dear Lord, no! You can
Oh,
have
sorry. Heat the
all the
product.
heat.
I was like, oh, you're going to put in your
Oh.
order. Oh, for an
Go
open
for heat.
fall.
Oh, okay. It's called, yeah, it's also,
It's
speaking of
Aragon
things with
here.
different names, it's
Yes,
Aragon.
right.
Aragon in Ontario, heat out west. I also learned that one. Yeah, we like to call things just to keep things simple. Okay, producer Jay, let's go to our last read of the night, and then we've got to talk some diseases and of course our insect disease interplay as well. Thank you to our show sponsors, Rhizosorb, the Canola School, and RealAg Shops. RealAg Shops is a video series brought to you by Princess Auto. In this series, check out smart and slick shops from across Canada. Do you know someone who has a great shop? Nominate them for a tour by emailing shaney@realagriculture.com. There's a new episode up this week. And it is a super cool one, so go check it out. Okay, so disease discussions are always fascinating to me because I think of them as like an early season thing, but realistically, there are plenty of things that we potentially have to be watching for. And as we talked about just a few weeks ago about tar spot, it's something that we potentially have to be anticipating. By the time we see it getting really bad, it's far too late. So there are, of course, right now, as we talked about today, Pete, lots of tassels out, but I don't care about tassels. I care about silks. I care about green silks mostly. So right now we've got a risk level that could be high, could be low, could be medium. How do we know? Pete, you've got some slides to walk us through at least some of the diseases we might be looking at for soybeans and corn. Which one do you want to start with? Tar spot?
Yeah. So why don't we start with slide 4 if we could, Jay?
Okay.
I think we'll skip the first few. So
Okay.
here, this is the new crop risk tool, and I thought I had the URL is not showing up, and I apologize. I thought the URL
Okay.
was at the top of that, but
We can find it and
this
share
is
it.
absolutely this is out of, or Albert will put it in the chat. I'm quite sure of that.
Yes.
This is the new website that Damon Mason out of or pardon me, not Damon Mason, Damon Smith out of Wisconsin is pretty key on pulling together. And so I just, this is the tar spot map, and if you look at it, it's really intriguing. So that number 1, and I've blanked out. So these are locations that we scout, and that number 1 is my farm, and so it's the only one that is at low risk. But if you really focus down here in the bottom right corner, you can see that through all of June, it was actually at very high risk. And so that, like, we were at significant risk. And a lot of people kind of think, because Albert always says, oh, tar spot showed up on the 5th of July, or it showed up on the 8th of July. Well, it actually infected the corn crop 3 or 4 weeks before that.
Right.
So we had lots of opportunity for the tar spot to begin. And if you actually go back to slide 1 now, Jay.
It'll take a moment. Oh, there we go.
There
we go.
So this is kind of what's really cool about tar spot, and most growers right now in the corn crop, it's gib, right, gibberella ear rot, and it's tar spot. Those are the two diseases. There's also a northern corn leaf blight that affects Ontario. If you go into the U.S., it's gray leaf spot. Gray leaf spot, interestingly enough, is actually on that website, right? That the crop pest website. But this, and I expect lots of people have seen this before, but in 2021, we had an absolute disaster of tar spot in the areas that had inoculum. And it's all about this leaf wetness. So there was 85 of 91 days with over 7 hours of leaf wetness through that July through to October, or July, actually through July through to the end of September. So that July, August, September timeframe. In 2022, we thought we were going to have another disaster because it was so bad in 21. With 49 out of 91 days, it was a non-issue, right? It was just an absolute non-issue. In 2023, it hit us again and it moved north. In 2024, it hit us again and it was costing us 60 bushels per acre where growers didn't control it, and it moved north again and east. So it just keeps moving. So now, Jay, if you go to slide number 5, if we could. And so again, these are 3 of the clients. I've blanked their names out, but you can see that even though we would think with the heat that we've had, with the dry weather that we've had, because a lot of these spots are well below normal rainfall, but because of that 7 hours of leaf wetness, some of these locations are at pretty high risk for tar spot. And this website is just a great tool to use to figure out. And what's really intriguing is you go look at the map and that number 1, that Lucan site, and man, my farm is at much lower risk, and it's sort of embedded in between all the spots that are at higher risk. So it's really, really quite site specific from that leaf wetness. And then what I really found interesting, Jay, if you go to slide 6, and so this is the dawn risk, right?
Okay.
The gibberella ear rot risk. And I don't know if I've seen it that low.
I don't think I believe this.
And
Albert, can you get on this? Because how is that possible? I just don't think it is.
And so how it's possible is that the jib needs rainfall, right? It's not about leaf wetness. And it's just the differences. And I asked Albert before I came on tonight, because I looked at this map and I was like you, Lyndsey. I said, if we have high tar spot risk, baby, we've got high jib risk. And Albert says that the data is in here. I believe he said since 2011 to 2024, the Ontario data is in here, and it's been just too hot for that jib to develop, and that the jib risk is actually much lower than what a lot of us thought it would be. And again, I'm not like we're still traveling slowly here, Lyndsey.
Yes. But make of this what you will.
but this, so to me,
that makes sense.
What I'm doing with this, and I think it makes perfect sense, is that which disease am I going to target the most?
Right.
I'm going to target tar spot, because the model says I'm at a much higher risk for tar spot than I am for jib. And so, to hit jib, we would need green silk. But if I can, and I mean, this is a stretch because we have so many acres to cover, it's a real stretch. But if I can hit the tail end of the jib window, so green silk that is almost starting to turn brown, can't be brown, but if I can hit that, I still get the jib control on a year where I have low risk, and I extend my tar spot control well into the season to give me more protection from tar spot and from northern corn leaf blight. And I just think that's way, way cool data.
And Albert adds, thank you, Dr. Jeanette, the high temperatures and moisture drive the risk. We've had 3 times the amount of temps above 30 degrees compared to last year. So that would explain that. Can everyone just appreciate this is why I've been so miserable? It has been hot and humid, and Albert just proves it. So there you go. Okay. Fascinating tool. Everybody go check it out. Jason can read my mind, which I'm sorry, Jason. But one of the things that, Jeanette, while I have you here, because I know this is definitely in what you're passionate about for sure on the canola front is, and this is speaking of, Pete, you said tar spot, infected 3 weeks before we found it. Blackleg and verticillium, they entered the plant even sooner. but we don't know that we've necessarily got a problem till really late in the season. So, Jeanette, when should I, for this season, when do I start scouting? When do I start clipping stems to start gauging where these levels are at in my crop?
If you're me, you start now, but
Okay.
it's probably on the early side. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
say there's definitely folks who know what they're looking for now. But if you feel like you're not sure, wait a little bit longer. It's definitely going to show its face. And so if you're in the east and you're in Manitoba or even along that Saskatchewan Manitoba border, I hate to tell you, if you don't know it yet, you have verticillium. You absolutely
Mm-hmm.
do.
Yes.
Blackleg is a little bit more dependent on management practices, your hybrid selection, etc. But it's probably been a really good year. And like you say, clubroot's another one. These infections start early, but they
Mm-hmm.
take a season to develop. And so, um, you know, you you could have the problem, and then we don't even really know if it's going to be a problem. So, scouting is
Yeah.
good to see if it's there. It's not something like sclerotinia or like fusarium head blight, where we are thinking of using a fungicide in season, for example. And so this is really just leading us into harvest. Maybe we have to prioritize a field, for example, um,
Mm-hmm.
or just knowing for the future, hey, this is what we had in this field. So I think the other important thing is that we talk about, we think about clubroot, we think about Alberta, um, we think about verticillium, we think about Manitoba, and yeah, like we definitely have hot spots, right? But I would discourage anyone from making a judgment. You're driving past the field, if you see a flat spot or uh, maybe your canola is starting to lodge in a spot, and so you're in Manitoba, so you're like, well, that's verticillium. No, you're gonna stop the vehicle. You're gonna pump the brakes there. Take a picture of your
Mm-hmm.
VO monitor. Just joking. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, you actually do want to get out. And this is where I kind of like, again, they don't really line up great, but if you are pulling out canola, and this is the coolest part of insect scouting, you actually like are encouraged to pull it out and like thrash it around.
Yes.
But you
Yes.
already have those plants out, so why not cut the stems? And if you're not seeing anything
Yep.
there, you're going to come back. I'm going to say we used to go with swath timing. That's getting a bit outdated, maybe. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
say 80% seed color change. That's probably
Okay.
awesome. And if you miss that window, no worries. Honestly, I've said it before. I'll stick with it. There's no better viewing chair than the combine seat. If you
Yep.
see something weird, drop that pin, like make it a different color than your kochia pin and your rock pin. And then like if you don't want to
Yep.
stop the combine there, you're just going to come back, and that's when you can still pull
Yep.
up roots, do your clippings, send away samples, and it's going to tell you pretty definitively what your issues might have been
Yes.
that season.
So when you say, we're pretty sure there probably is far more verticillium out there. Um, is it that farmers assume it's blackleg and just they've got a plan for that, so they'll just keep going with that plan? Or are we just, have we clipped enough stems to actually confirm it in different areas? Do these diseases, like, are they buddies? Because we have other diseases and other pests that are buddies. Do these like to hang out with each other or not?
Apparently, they're buddies.
Ah,
Yeah.
knew it.
Preliminary information from the U of M suggests that when you have one, blackleg could make your verticillium worse. And so knowing that you have one, or knowing that you have both, but they could be acting together, is pretty important. And then we've talked about insects, but even going back, looking at some of our insect pests, we didn't talk about this going way back in the season, like right back to the beginning. You got root maggots or whatever, but
Yeah.
all of these things just seem to act together to act as like putting holes in plants and just making entry points for disease to get in there. And I think too, we talked about it, I didn't, I was on chat, but you were talking about stresses in
Yes.
plants. And
Yeah.
it's funny that often the more stressed plants are the ones that can show symptoms. I mean, if it's a bad
Right.
disease year. So this is the fun part now. This is what I said. Canola's looking good. I don't want to jinx it, but this is the time of the season where we get to enjoy how beautiful it looks. And now it's just kind of, well, let's see how this year turns out, because it's
Right.
impossible to say kind of at this point.
Right. And in 2 weeks from now, you might be seeing some of that premature ripening or, lodge spots or those sorts of things where you start to see those issues. We are in like the honeymoon period. Jason says the canola blues brothers, blackleg and verticillium. One question, because I'm blanking on it. Blackleg, of course, enters the plant very early, as you said, potentially through a wound or an insect feeding site or hail damage, something like that. How does verticillium enter the plant? And is it soil borne? Is it like, what's the life cycle there?
Yeah, it's soil borne as well.
Okay.
But I guess not necessarily. Like primarily, we're thinking of it entering through the roots and infecting the plant. But really, it's such small, like sclerotia are big, but when they call it microsclerotia for verticillium, that's very accurate. Just
They're
absolutely
teeny.
tiny on the residue. So if you have had verticillium bad enough, if you've ever grown peas and you harvest peas and you get that dust, which doesn't necessarily always mean disease, but for canola, if you have bad verticillium, you kind of get this cloud. And so you can imagine that this is not just moving with soil necessarily. So
Got it.
soil borne, but not always moving just with soil. So moving with residue.
Okay.
Kind of the same as blackleg that way too. So
Yeah.
definitely buddies. Yeah. So yeah, but also infecting early, just kind of stays in the plant, hangs out, does its thing, and then it's really towards the end of the season that we see these diseases possibly devastating effects. So it is challenging from that respect.
Yeah. Pete, would you rather something that is like lingering and stalking your crop all season and shows up at the end, or something that, like, oh goodness, the whole head has turned fuzzy pink, like with your dreaded fusarium? Which do you prefer?
Well, at least with fusarium, I still have something to harvest. So
True.
blackleg and canola, I equate to take all in wheat. And take all in wheat, you don't know you have it until, I don't know, 10 days before harvest. And wherever you have take all, it just goes flat. And oftentimes, it's just what the name says, it takes it all, and there's no grain in the head. So now we have really expensive straw. I would much rather have fusarium that I can try to do something about at the right time. But even if I get hit with it, at least I have something in the bin that maybe I can do something with to put on a train and ship, as we did in 1996, load unit trains of fusarium loaded wheat and ship it to the cattle feedlots in Texas. At least, and dilution is the solution to pollution, and so you just diluted the DON level to the point where the cattle could eat it. Things like blackleg, things like take all, you do all the work, you don't know you have them, and at the end you have zero. That's a pretty tough pill to swallow.
I think this is the point where this also not my strong suit, but this is where, like, breeders, like, hats off to them, because pretty amazing that despite all the canola that we grow, we can still grow a damn good crop. So and lots to do with the breeding that has gone in there.
Well, and verticillium I know is one of those ones that breeders are The companies are all looking at the germplasm that they have and trying to figure out what we have for tolerance or, resistance, etc. Pete, same idea. And Albert was just on, not long ago with Tar Spot talking about, exactly that from the breeding side. What do we already have? I do want to touch on stripe rust just quickly, although we're running out of time. On the stripe rust side, Pete, there was a wheat school that just went out that if anybody wants to go check out, are we concerned about a stripe rust that is perhaps evolving past the tolerances or susceptibilities that we have out there?
Yeah, absolutely. It's happened all over Europe and in the UK, and so the resistance has broken uh, to one of the specific genes that we use. And this is the problem when you use a single gene and it's a site-specific mode of action, the disease can mutate, or that one individual that's out there eventually builds up in the population. I think most of the time it mutates, but we have wheat varieties that in other parts of the world have not got any stripe rust, where they do have stripe rust pressure. And here in Ontario, there's at least 3 varieties that we're aware of that last year we would have said, or 2 years ago we would have said, had very good stripe rust tolerance, that now are being just devastated by stripe rust. So yeah, resistance is always a moving target. Whether it's diseases, insects, or weeds, resistance is always a moving target.
Mm-hmm. And Albert adds, disease management starts with genetics. Yes, sir. And as we've discussed tonight, of course, rotation comes into play for a lot of these. But sometimes, like with some of our diseases, the wind just brings it in, and there's not much you can do about that. Insects as well. It's like, hey, we had a storm, and now we have this pest. Great. Thanks,
Yeah.
America.
So
Anyway, yeah.
Lyndsey,
Go ahead, Pete.
to finish up on that, because Jason put
Yeah.
in the chat earlier about armyworm, how it's their rye gets hit, right? Manitoba rye
Yes.
gets hit.
Yeah.
Did you know that the armyworm moths, when they fly in from the US, are actually up in the jet stream? And
They're that high up?
yeah, they're that high up, and they are so good at sensing what's beneath them that they will find the very best luscious looking fields, and that's where they will zero in to land in and lay their eggs. That's why they lay their eggs in spring cereals, when the spring cereals are super lush, as opposed to those useless soybeans who haven't yet started to do anything, right?
That's exactly
And
what they
plus
are.
they
Yeah.
don't like broadleaves either. But regardless, it's really interesting that they're way up there and they can tell way down there, that's where I'm going to land and lay my eggs. So yep,
And
it is
if
cool.
that's not a plug for Manitoba whiskey, I do not know what is. I swear this is water.
You know what? We don't touch here. So there you go. Even the moths know that the rye is
Yeah,
delightful.
I came
Yeah.
all the way from the jet stream.
Yeah, I came down for this. That's actually a bit terrifying though, Pete. Like I feel like that's like alien level type things, and so insects always surprise me on some of the stuff that they can do. Right? Like when we have the ones that can listen in the stem and then they stick their little piercing mouth parts in there and get the larvae that are in the stem for the like it's fascinating to me. Anyway, I'm always happy when the entomologists come and join us. Okay, we are out of time. In fact, we're over time, but I don't care because this was lots of fun. And I agree with Ray DeBenko. Nights like this, I think I really appreciate. Yes, Jeanette, you've got the Pests and Predators book that we need a plug for. Yes, by all means, resources. Where can we go for some?
Ooh, that is a good plug because I definitely agree with Pete here. So that's twice tonight.
Yeah, we're keeping
Insect,
count.
like even as a seasoned agronomist, it's really hard to remember insects. I mean, they economic thresholds change with crop stage, insect
Yeah.
stage. Really hard to remember. So yeah, this book is pretty awesome. That pests and predators. We've got a couple of like prairie pest monitoring. There's a disease monitoring, provincial reports, and then really nice. I used to make my own cheat sheets, but then the Canola Council's got this. Which way am I going here?
There we go. That way. Yeah.
When you should be scouting for your pests and what the thresholds are. So a lot of great resources out there, and there's absolutely no shame in having those in a binder in your truck.
Yeah, absolutely. And Pete, what is the website? Jay, maybe you can bring it up, the slide with that actually had the URL on it, or if we can, or if Albert, if you can drop it in the chat for our
there it is.
It's the crop risk tool, and it's out of Wisconsin. Is that what?
Yes, it is. Yeah,
okay,
and so you can see it there. It's connect.doit.wisc.edu.
Okay.
Crop Protection Network. If you Google that, you can find it. Yeah.
Okay, absolutely.
Really cool.
Yep. Go plug some things in, and everyone feel sorry for me. Okay, that is tonight's show. Thank you, Jeanette. Thank you, Pete. I really appreciate it.
There's so much more we should have covered.
Oh, I know. We have so much more, but that's, you know what? That's showbiz, baby. We only get an hour. So, but I will. August is Friday, if everybody can believe this. So keep in mind, next Monday is the civic holiday. There is no show. So just this is your reminder. There's no show next week. We'll be back August 11th with a new show. So everyone enjoy the August long weekend. It's going to be very warm, and I'm going to find water, and I'm going to stay by the water, and that will be it. Anyway, but this is, I feel like this is the lull before, of course, that late season scouting, those pre-harvest passes in the west, and harvest really gets rolling. Pete's happy because the wheat's just about in, and then again we get a lull. Oh no, the Blue Jays are losing. That's okay. They've hardly done that all year, Albert. It's fine. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jeanette. Thank you, Pete. Great resources, great discussion tonight. Thank you, everyone in the chat, for your great questions and your comments and your insight. Really appreciate it. We'll see you next time here on The Agronomists. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you.